Here's are the questions, here are the questions of the day, my friends. But as always, we have a great show lined up, and I'm particularly excited because 2 weeks ago we had this special guest on. We were having a lot of technical difficulties, and we've since then worked out all of these bugs, if you will. And I kind of want to, I even asked our guest to sort of take an interesting approach to today's show, because in his bio, he spoke about success. So if you're in the chat and if you're with us live, my question to you would be, what's success to you? What does it mean? Success means many different things for many different people. I can tell you that for success for me, at least from a career point, is whatever's in my calendar is because I put it there, not because somebody else is putting it there for me, which is why I'm not very employable. For me, a job is an acronym for just over broke. And so I'm not really an employable kind of guy. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And that's why I always connect with our guest today, because he's what I like to call a serial entrepreneur. And when you hear his story, and we chatted a couple of weeks ago a little bit about it, about growing up in a very strict Asian household and what that meant. And I have to tell you that, man, it's incredible. It's incredible at how when you look at somebody from the outside, you really don't know what's happening on the inside. We've all heard the expression, you never judge a book by its cover, but this dude, man, he is one awesome human being. I think that that could be a little biased because I'm his friend, but it's biased because he's also dedicated his life to the martial arts. And for 25 years, I have dedicated myself to the martial arts. And with using it as a vehicle to help others become the best version of themselves. So Albert, I appreciate you chiming in. For me, success is doing what you love, making a positive impact, and being able to support my family financially. Love it. Love it. This is an important question. And, even with my clients, I talk about this on a regular basis, because what it requires is something called clarity. And so the idea is that I hope that you have clarity. And if you don't, a clarity coach, and you're looking at them. But today, guys, I'm very lucky. If you hear a little bit of crying in the background, I'm sorry. My little guy is home because one of the kids got COVID. So he's home from daycare because they've shut down the program. So if you hear a little bit of going wild in the background, you know what it is. So today I'm honored to have a gentleman who, again, I considered a friend, but has had lots of success. As a martial artist and as a martial arts school owner, I had one school, and at the peak, there was 500 students in the school, and that was what I call fairly successful. But this guy's got 3. In fact, I asked him the other night. I said, I could barely run 1. I wonder how you could run 3. And on top of it, he's going to talk about his other business today, and some of the other ventures that he's on. I hope he gets into some of that. But, I think we should just bring him on. And I think we should just welcome my dear friend, Crew Warren Lee. So wherever you are in the world, my friends, get off of your comfortable seat and put your hands together for the man, Crew Warren Lee.
Good afternoon.
Crew.
I love that entrance. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah, two weeks ago, I was on. I think maybe some people here saw that, and I want to just apologize for the technical difficulties that we had. But this time, I figured, okay, I'm gonna do it from a sitting position, proper network access. So I think we should be good. And we did a little test run the other day, Crew Mel, and we found that it worked out well. So I'm actually looking forward to staying the whole length and really chatting with everybody and chatting with you. And also hoping to perhaps inspire some of the people here. And if they have any questions, they could certainly ask.
Yes, thank you, Crew.
Thank you.
I mean,
I'm clear as day.
clear as day.
Yes.
Mr. Poutine Nation and Josh Leslie, thank you so much for always being here. And thank you for last night, brother. I just want you to say, Josh, great to have your dinner mastermind last night on Clubhouse. If you don't, make sure you give Poutine Nation a follow because he rocks. So here's the thing, Crew. I mean, there's so much to talk about with you because you're not this one-dimensional guy. Take us back. Give us sort of like at least a brief synopsis of what we talked about yesterday and or 2 weeks ago, and then talk a little bit. Take us from there because I'm super excited because there's a gentleman, Crew, in the chat today. His name's Albert, and he was a guest on my show. And you remind me a lot of Albert because Albert was a CA. I mean, is a CA, but he decided to get out. And he decided to go against the grain and leave sort of, the years of study. And for you, you talked about it last time that you were a high school teacher. And you decided to leave it. Albert says in the chat, I'm a recovering CA. Crew, take us back, man. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Talk to us, paint a picture for us.
All right, so just a quick recap of what we talked about 2 weeks ago. I was born in a very traditional Asian family, Asian being Chinese more specifically. I'm born here. I'm actually third generation in Canada. So my father was born here and my grandmother was born here. So we have a long family history in Canada. I know we never worked on the railroads. They came here as what I understood, business people. Came to Saskatchewan in the early 1900s, and apparently one of the family members defrauded us, and everything kind of went sour from there. But we stayed in the country and worked hard and all that kind of stuff. Now, even being in this country for so long, my parents still carried these traditional values from the culture and instilled it upon me. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's just very different from the way Western families raise their kids. I was very, very strict in the sense that my father specifically, he really instilled a couple things. Number one is respect for elders, respect for authority. So when you're in a classroom, the teacher's talking, you shut the hell up. Number two, education, very, very important. Number three, hard work and discipline. Oh, and number four, frugality. So don't waste money. Try to make a lot of money. Don't waste it. That sort of thing. Be smart with it. So really, those values, those values are important, definitely. But I think it was a little bit overboard, a little bit too extreme. It's kind of like I don't know if anybody here has read that article by Amy Chua. It's called "The Hymn of the Tiger Mom." You can actually find it online. And Amy Chua was a Chinese lady in the U.S. I think she became a professor at one of the universities. She talked about how raising Chinese children are very different from the West. And she talked about how discipline is extremely important. And this is what she said in it. And I'll just leave it this part here. She said, I was teaching my daughter how to play piano. I want my daughter to play piano. That's very, very important, play piano. And at first, my daughter played it because I forced her to. Not that she really enjoyed it, but she played it. And oh yes, thank you, Poutine Nation, for writing that up. And she was saying how her daughter was playing, and she forced her daughter to play every day after school. After her homework, she would have to play. And then her daughter would just get frustrated at times, wasn't getting it sometimes. It was just too slow, and she wasn't getting. So she got upset. And then one day, her mom just forced her, just said, no, you sit there and you do this till you get it right. There's no choice. So the daughter got really upset. She got up, she ripped up all the sheet notes and threw it on the ground. So then Amy said, I very calmly, I didn't yell at her, I very calmly picked up all the pieces off the ground that she ripped up. I taped it back together. I put it back on the piano and I said, sit down, do it again. And she said she continued to do that. And after a while, her daughter just hated it. But something happened months later. Her daughter started to get it. Then she started stringing the notes together. And she says, hey, look at this, Mom. I'm starting to get it. This is starting to get clear. Okay, I can read these notes. I know what keys to hit. And the next thing you know, the daughter's forming a beautiful song. And she says, my daughter was so happy. She says, my daughter felt that she was on top of the world. And so she said now her daughter just loves to grab any sheet music and play, and she doesn't get it. That's fine. She'll sit there and practice and get it, and she loves it. So what Amy Chua said is, you see, that's called self-esteem. In Western culture, self-esteem is about coddling the child. So it's kind of like, well, you know, if it's, oh, it hurts, okay, don't worry. Oh, you're tired, you can sit down. It's no big deal. Oh, that person said a bad name to you. Well, we got to go do something about that. You know, it's not. It's just really all about just coddling the child. Unfortunately, whether you agree with that or not, that's how I see it. I used to be a teacher, like you said, and I see a lot of kids getting coddled in school, and it's terrible. Okay, they come in self-entitled. Every time there's a problem, they whine and they complain. They don't sit down and try to solve it. But she says, see, in Chinese culture, forcing your child to do that, even though as much as they hate it, once they get it, they feel so good about themselves. And that is self-esteem. So for example, like math, they say Asian children are really good at math. They keep saying that, okay? That's a stereotype that they have. It's not that Asian children are smarter than anyone else. We're all human. We are all born with a brain and two eyes, and we're all on a equal level playing field when we're born, unless, of course, if you're born with maybe a mental illness or something, then that's a little bit different. But on the whole, we're all equal. And a lot of times we're the product of our environment. So in a traditional strict Chinese household, they force the kids to sit there and do math, because the thing is, education is so important. So they force the kids to sit there and practice and practice and practice, like a musical instrument or anything else. Sit, practice, practice, practice. So what I find about math is really interesting. See, math, anyone, in my opinion, can get math as long as you sit and practice. Some people take longer than others, but if you sit and practice enough, you start to get it. And it takes usually a parent to sit with you and go, okay, you're not getting it. You got to sit there and you got to try again. Let me see if I can help you, but we got to keep doing this until you get it right. No. And if they want to get and play video games, no, you can't. You sit down and you do it and get it right. So after a while, the kid will get it. And once the kid gets it, he or she is so happy. They feel so good about themselves because they achieved that accomplishment after all that grind and hard work. So she says in the article, that's the tiger mom. Okay, that's a Chinese tiger mom, is to sit there and force the kids to do it over and over and over again until they get it right. And it doesn't matter if you feel tired or you're sleepy or you're hungry. It doesn't matter. You just sit there and do it until you get it right. So it's a little bit strict, but it seems to work for that. But of course, there's criticisms to that. I mean, it can lead to it's a lot of stress, anxiety, perhaps mental health issues, depression, things like that. They don't talk about that in Chinese culture, okay? Because that's kind of it's kind of frowned upon because it's a sign of personal weakness, okay? So so if you go around telling people that you're depressed or you have this, you have that, then, you know, because Chinese culture is all about face. So it's about this face you present to the world, how successful you are. If you're a doctor, you drive a Mercedes, or you live in a $3 million home, like you went to U of T for MBA, something like that. Okay, so these are big accomplishments. But if you go around saying, "Oh, I have depression," or "My kid's a failure," then unfortunately you get judged on that, and people go, "Is it because you failed as a parent to raise your kid properly? You let him or her be lazy when they didn't want to work? You let them play video games when they were supposed to do their math homework? So it's on you." So unfortunately, that's the type of culture I grew up in, and I'm sure other people who grew up in this culture can relate with me. But I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just the way things were done. So anyways, I was raised in that household. So through life, I carry this sort of discipline with me that, school is very important. Hard work is very important. But also too, the thing about the culture is that I find that it's very risk adverse. So risk adverse meaning they don't really like risk, okay? Because see, opening a business is risky. Investing in this new thing is risky. Okay, those things are all risky. So the problem with risk is that, you see, if it works out, that's the most amazing thing. But if it doesn't work out, people are judging you, because remember, we have face, we have to save face. So if I say, oh, I opened a business and I failed, then I might think people might look at me and go, oh yeah, you're a failure, you're dumb, you didn't work hard enough. You see what I mean? Because thinking back to the culture, you see, I told you, you should have went to school, you should have studied hard, you'd be a CA or you'd be a doctor by now. But no, you had to go and open a business and you failed. Now look at you. So that sort of element holds a lot of us back from sort of going against the grain, as we talk about taking risk. Okay, so in this sort of Chinese culture, they want this kind of guaranteed path to success, and that guaranteed path is hard work and education. So if you study really hard and you work really hard, you're going to go to U of T or McGill for biochem, and then you study really hard, you do your MCAT, you do really well, and then you get into medical school, U of T or something like that, okay, become a doctor, and then you'll make $250,000 a year, you'll live in a nice house and drive a nice car, and then I can go and tell all my friends that my son or my daughter is a doctor, and that is one of the most apex things you could do. Because a lot of times Chinese parents get together, they always like brag about what kind of accomplishments their children have. Oh, my kid's at U of T. Oh, my kid's level 10 piano, and this and that. And then if you sitting there don't have anything to say about your kid, then it kind of, they look at you and go, what kind of parent were you? You let your kid be lazy. You didn't discipline your kid hard enough. So that's the way they look at it. So if they say, oh, my kid opened a business and failed, well, that sounds really bad. You know what I mean? So risk adversity is not a good thing. Frugality is also very important in the culture. You want to make money and you want to kind of save it, maybe buy a house. Like it's not about taking big risks with the money. But what's interesting is that there's a really good book. Okay, I'll tell you this right now. It's called Millionaire Next Door. Let me grab that. Okay, this book here, The Millionaire Next Door, it's by Thomas J. Stanley. Now, this book, when I read this book, it kind of blew my mind. It's one of the greatest books I've ever read. What it talked about was that it interviewed 1,000 millionaires, self-made millionaires from across the U.S. And the author here wanted to dispel the myth that millionaires are a bunch of like playboys driving for Porsches and sitting in private yachts and going to have $500 dinner a night dinners and stuff. He wanted to dispel that myth, and he did. So he interviewed 1,000 millionaires from across the U.S. These are self-made millionaires. They're not like rap stars or Tom Cruise. It's not people like that. Okay, it's just people that have started from nothing and built something. What he discovered, really interesting. Now, this is really interesting. The majority of millionaires that he had interviewed, the first thing he looked at is what was their profession? What was it that made you so much money that you became a millionaire? Now, he did find there's a few physicians, surgeons, there's a few lawyers, not that many. Okay, so they think these high-powered paying positions is the way to wealth. Could be, depends what you do with it, but that's not the be-all, end-all. So what he found was that a majority of the people who were self-made millionaires, you ready for this? Were entrepreneurs. Isn't that interesting? Entrepreneurs. Something like 60-something%, more than half of the people interviewed, almost 70%, were entrepreneurs. Okay, they had their own business, whether it's, and it's interesting what kind of businesses they were in. Everything, pharmaceuticals, construction company, plumbing company, IT, accounting firm, law firm, all sorts of different businesses that they were involved in. And so I knew right away, as when I read that, I go, you know what? So becoming wealthy requires an element of risk. I mean, you can still become wealthy if you're a doctor or you're getting $250,000 a year, but it depends what you do with that money. It's interesting what he talked about in the book. He said what he said about doctors was this. He said he found that a lot of the doctors he interviewed were not wealthy. Okay. High income and wealth are two separate things. So wealth is about, okay, let's put this in perspective. Let's take two people. The first person makes $200,000 a year and their net worth is $50,000 a year. They probably have a massive mortgage. They're paying off. They got leases on 2 exotic cars. They're leasing a yacht, all that kind of stuff. Or they're taking really expensive vacations. They got a nanny. Kids are in private school, all that stuff. Okay, so very, very expensive lifestyle. They're just paying out every paycheck. They just pay. So there's not much left over. Now let's take the flip side. You have here you have a school custodian, not called janitors anymore. Custodian. Let's say he or she's making $50,000 a year, $55,000 a year, but his net worth is $500,000. So this person socked away a lot of that wealth and it bought like stocks or perhaps saved enough to put a down payment on a rental property. So this person here is growing their wealth. So let me ask you this, who's better off ahead in that case? The $200,000 a year person with his high flying lifestyle, or the school custodian who has a rental property, who has a bunch of stocks, who has a bunch of different investments? You see what I mean? So what he talked about in The Millionaire Next Door was he looked at all these types of people. And he found that the people who were very frugal and who took risks with their money, like a lot of investments or open businesses, they became wealthy. Whereas, and what he talked about with doctors, he says, unfortunately, the issue with doctors, I'm talking about medical doctors, not PhDs. The problem with doctors, he says, is because they are considered almost like an apex in society that in terms of one of the highest sort of incomes that you'll ever get. Very hard to get in medical school, very competitive. The best and the brightest of people become doctors, apparently. And so once you become a doctor, there's a status that you have to keep. So this status means that, well, I'm a doctor, so I need to show the world that I'm very smart and successful and rich or high income. Sorry, no, I'm not using the word rich, high income. So they need to drive expensive German car, probably going to get a $2 or $3 million mortgage on a house. Probably got to have a nanny, most likely. Got to have a cottage. Got to take a lot of vacations, expensive dinners, maybe yacht club, golf club, all those sorts of things. So that stuff is very, very expensive. So a lot of these doctors he found were just paying for all these expensive toys that they had, or all these wonderful things that they had in life. And because of that, not many of them accumulate a lot of wealth.
Warren, I guess my question for you would be, so, you've grown up in this home, you've learned about the difference between, high income versus wealth, which is where there's a huge difference.
Yes.
So, but growing up, how did this affect you? And because, I gave a bit of an introduction that you're a martial arts school owner. You're one of the most successful in Toronto in terms of Muay Thai. You have this success in your school. You also have another business. And so how did this affect you? How did this upbringing affect you? Because you did become a teacher.
So that's a great question, and I'll rewind a little bit. So yes, as I was growing up, my father, so he was really big on being frugal and saving his money. So my father bought his house in 1970, and he paid it off in 1979. That's how he's insane. Okay, so I mean, I'm sorry, I just didn't say he's insane. He's just excruciatingly frugal. He really wanted me to be like that. I asked sort of what investments does he do? So because, it paid off the house in 1979, it's been 30, 40 years later, what have you been doing with your money? So he told me he's just been buying bank stocks since the 1980s. So I'm like, bank stocks? Why? And he says, because it's very safe and a lot of times just keeps growing. So he told me, he goes, how many times these bank stocks have split and split and split and split and split? I'm like, I'm sure quite a bit, right? So this is what he believed. This is what he taught me. He says, you should have a full, okay, you know how most parents want their kids to be like them? So if your dad was, let's say, a doctor, you probably want your kid to be a doctor. If your dad was a police officer, probably want you to be a police officer. If your dad was a teacher, probably want you to be a teacher, or mom. Okay, so my father, this is what he wanted from me. So he had a full-time job and a business on the side. So he told me, you got to do the same thing. So you see, a full-time job is safe, it's secure, and brings in a guaranteed income. You got coverage, benefits, all that stuff, all that jazzy lingo that they talk about in full-time jobs. And number two, you see, a full-time job is 9 to 5. So that means you have evenings free, you have weekends free, and you have holidays free. Okay. Now, he said to me, you should not be using your free time. Like, you shouldn't be wasting your free time. Don't just watch TV when you get home, or the weekend just sleep in and do nothing. Don't do that kind of stuff, because it's not good for your character. It's not good for your soul. So he said to me, he said, that free time you have, you should start up a side business. And because a side business is good, because it brings in additional income, you can have write-offs, and it's productive, additional income, and it's not risky because it's just a side business. So if it doesn't go well, then you still have this full-time job. So it's all about risk adversity, playing it safe. So he taught me you got to play it safe, and then you got to save all your money. He doesn't like me wasting any kind of money. When I remember buying him a birthday present one time, he got mad because he goes, "How much did that cost?" I'm like, "Holy jeez." He goes, "You shouldn't be wasting your money on that." I'm like, "Okay." That's cool. So I never bought him anything expensive after that. Thank God, it saves me money. So he was telling me, well, you got to invest in all these safe things. Like you got to save your money and buy bank stocks or buy metals or whatever. I don't know. Okay, so this kind of stuff. So that's the path he set me on. So I'm thinking, okay, so I'm gonna have a full-time job and a business on the side. What should I do? So my full-time job, I became a teacher, a high school teacher. I didn't really know what I want to do in life. So high school teacher, I thought, okay, well, it's a good job because the pay is all right. You got a lot of benefits, pension. You got lot of holidays.
A lot of holidays.
Yeah, like you got a good pension, and you have a lot of time too. Like evenings, you'll have free. Weekends, you have free if you manage your time properly during the day. You get all your marking done and stuff like that. You can have the free time. So I'm thinking that free time will allow me to have a business on the side. So I started a business on the side, which was, well, I'm thinking to myself, this is back when I was like in my 20s, my mid 20s. When I started teaching, I think I was like 22, 23 years old when I started teaching, something like that. Because, undergrad and then teachers college 1 year. I think it's 2 years now. I feel sorry for you guys who are doing that. But anyways, I started my job as a teacher, and then I started business on the side. And then I was taking business classes at U of T because I wanted to learn how to run a business. So I took marketing, accounting, human resource management, which is very different because my undergrad was in sociology and history. So nothing to do with business. But, it's good. It works a different part of the brain. And that's really important. So I sat down, I thought, but what kind of business can I do? What can I do that's on the side? So I thought, well, I really like martial arts, really like Muay Thai. But I never had the idea that I want to run a Muay Thai gym. So what happened was back in I think it was early 2000s. Yes, mid to early 2000s. The chat line we had back then was ICQ. I don't know if any of you people remember that. Maybe some of you not even born then. Who knows? But ICQ. Okay, I remember that. So that was like a little chat platform. I remember this girl hit me up on ICQ. She said, "Oh, hey, Warren." I can remember her name. She's like, "My name is so-and-so. I'm a friend of Otto's." I'm like, "Oh yeah, my friend Otto." And she goes, "I heard you do kickboxing." And she says, "I heard kickboxing is a really good workout. And I'm wondering, are there any kickboxing gyms downtown?" And I'm like, "No, there isn't." Because it's back in like 2003, downtown Toronto. There was nothing here back then, right? There was a few like maybe out a little bit further out. And I said, "No," but then I said to her, "But you know what? I can give you lessons if you want." And she says, "You can give me lessons?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And she said, "Okay." And then she goes, "How much?" And I go, well, I wasn't really thinking I was going to charge her, but I'm like, because your friend of Otto's a really good friend of mine. And I go, "How much?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, $40. I just threw that number out. She goes, "Okay." I'm like, "Really? All right." So I had a pair of Thai pads in my living room at home, and a pair of boxing gloves and skipping rope. So then I go, "Well, I'm a student at U of T. so I have access to the hard house. And she goes, oh yeah, I'm a U of T grad, so I have hard house access. I'm like, okay, cool. So we met at hard house, and we went into the prayer room. They have a prayer room there. I remember nobody was using it at that time. So we went there, and I remember like for 1 hour, I made her do some skipping, some push-ups, some punches, and then I showed her how fighting stance and stuff. And then I held pads for her, and I worked the crap out of her. She really, really liked it. And then she gave me $40. She's like, oh my God, that was so good. And then I got $40, and I'm like, wow. Like, oh, yeah,
in
like,
1 hour.
Yeah, I'm like, I did something cool that I enjoyed. This person really liked it and gave me $40. And I'm like, holy shit, this is, oh, sorry. Pardon my,
No, you can swear, bro.
Okay. You know what they say about people who swear, right? They're apparently more honest.
Yeah, there you go. So swear away, baby.
Yeah. So $40. I'm like, wow. And because you know, you're talking to a guy who's just used to getting a paycheck, right? From the Toronto District School Board. So $40. And then she messaged me. She goes, oh, that was so good. When can we do it again? I'm like, oh yeah, man. Sure. Up to you. So we set up this regular schedule. She gave me $40. And I'm like, this is so amazing. Like, you know, it was just on weekends or after school. It was so good. And then I thought, you know what? Hey, I might be onto something. I'm like, if she likes it, I'm sure other people will too. So then I started advertising. Like I remember, like I put up some ads around U of T because there's like a bulletin there, and I remember getting a few calls. And there's they call me up and they go, hi, I see you do kickboxing, and yeah, I told them it's like $40. But then I'm like, if you buy a package of like 10, it's $300, so it's $30 each, right? So some of them would do that, but a lot of them didn't want to commit. And then that girl, original girl, she kept like asking me to do lessons with her like every like 3 times a week or something. I'm like, okay. And then I started getting busier with this little business, and then of course, then one day she goes, hey, listen, you know, I know this really great spot downtown. We should go for dinner. I'm like, oh man. I go, I'm like, oh, is that the reason why you're booking me so often?
That's it.
I'm like, I like your money, I really do.
But she had a little crush on the crew.
The crew crush, I guess we call it, right?
That's right.
So I go, you know, I thought about it. I'm like, listen, like this business, I always know in my head, and it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. Business and pleasure or personal / shouldn't be mixed. You know, you shouldn't. What are some of those?
You don't shit where you eat.
Yeah, don't shit where you eat. Don't dip your pen into company ink or whatever.
Yeah.
All these things, right? Yeah.
That's right.
So
Exactly.
No, because I didn't want to. And plus, I thought, you know, if I get involved with this girl, that source of revenue is going to be gone. So I'm thinking already, like as a business person, like, okay,
wow.
This is revenue, man. Like, you know, you don't let your personal stuff get in. So I'm like, listen, you know, I'd love to, but I got this business that's growing. I'm really busy, but you know, I'd love to continue training you, but after the training, I can't really grab a bite to eat because I'll have another client, you know, so I set myself up where I don't get myself into trouble. Right. So anyways, yeah, that's what happened there. And what happened was this, it was really funny. So I thought, okay, I needed a website for this little business of mine, little side, like kickboxing private business I had. So I asked a friend of mine, he was in the MBA program, really nice guy named David. I go, hey, David, can you like help me with the website and stuff? And he goes, yeah, okay. So I go, okay, tell you what, you set up a website for me and I'll buy you dinner. I'm like, he's like, okay. So he helped set up a website for me. It's leeskickboxing.com. I don't know if it's still around. I'm sure it still is. It's LEES and then kickboxing, KICKBOXING. That was my first website for this business back in the day. It was really funky, really crappy, but really kind of cool, nostalgic in a way now if you look at it. And then and the next thing I know, the more I started getting more calls, but then these people would be asking me, where are your classes? Where's your like kickboxing classes? Now, I didn't really call it Muay Thai back then. I called it Muay Thai kickboxing. The reason why is because I knew Muay Thai back in 2003 was not very popular. Not too many people knew what Muay Thai was. You see what I mean? But they knew what kickboxing was. So I called it Muay Thai kickboxing. Yes.
It's still there. It's still there.
Okay. All right. Yeah, at least there you go. Yeah, that's my first website, man. That was hardcore. Yeah, that's memory lane stuff. So people be like, hey, where are your classes? And I go, I don't have classes. I just do private lessons. They go, how much private lesson? I go, $40. They go, nah, that's too expensive. I'm looking for classes. I'm like, okay, sorry about that. Bye. And then another person will call, ask me for classes. And then another person will call. And then I go, why am I not giving classes? I go, one of the worst things you can do in business is say no to a customer. So I'm like, I should have classes. So I was doing a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu down on King Street back then. And I asked the gym owner, I said, hey, Mark, you think it's okay if I rent some space from you and I can host Muay Thai classes and you give me a favorable rent, and then all the people in the Muay Thai, your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program, I'll let them come in my class for free. He says, okay, that's cool. Because there's a bunch of times the gym was not even being used. So I started classes. I remembered my first class was, I think the first class I've ever held was 2004 in the new year. I took out an ad in the Now magazine.
Wow.
And yeah. And I remember getting called. I remember I had 4 students on my very first class. One of them was my privates though. And I charged $50 a month. So I made $200 that night. So I was like, wow, this is cool. So I mean, when you're a new entrepreneur, like these little things, it's, hey, we're talking about self-esteem before. This is a boost on your self-esteem. It's like,
100%.
I got something people want. I got something that people want to come and give me money. I'm like, wow, that's the coolest feeling ever. So I remember they really liked the class. And next thing I know, I kept running these classes and it started to grow. Now, I read a book at that time. Well, actually, I didn't read a book yet. I didn't read the book yet. I'll tell you what happened next. So here I was working full-time as a teacher. Then I ran to the gym at night, teach class at night, and I had classes in the weekends. So I was fulfilling my dad's prophecy of full-time job and a business on the side. Now, it was kind of cool. It went well for a little while. And actually, I have to say this. I was kind of depressed. Back then, it was around 2005 or something like that. I was a little bit depressed back then. And the reason why was because when I looked at the school board, the teachers I worked with, a lot of them were very unhappy at that time. I guess that's when the Mike Harris government came in. They got rid of OEC and the morale was very low in teaching, I remembered. And I remembered every lunchtime going in the staff room that these teachers would sit there and it would just be a bitch fest. Oh, goddamn government, goddamn parents, or this kid, that. Oh, I only have 5 more years. I get my goddamn pension. So I'm hearing this repeatedly. You see what I mean? So it's such a negative energy. Yeah. And I believe very strongly in energy. And I think we all do that. If you're around negative people versus being around successful people or positive people, makes a big difference on your mental psyche, right? Yes, thank you. Culture of griping. You're right. So the thing about that, I removed myself from that environment, and it's sad because when I listen to these teachers talk, a lot of them, like, I don't know, it's maybe just don't seem to manage their money properly, but they're always like just short on money. A lot of them have to do summer school because they need extra money. They keep talking about they got to pay off that mortgage, got to pay off their cottage, and a lot of teachers, they love holidays. Okay, it's like a God-given right. Every March break, got to have a holiday. Christmas, got to have a holiday. Summer, got to take a holiday. So all these vacations, they got to take. And of course, when you take all these vacations, it adds up, right? It adds up. And the problem with that is that you never really get to accumulate any kind of wealth. And I looked at my paychecks every week. All right. And I remember my salary back then. I really don't care about talking about it, but my salary back then was $60,000 a year. Okay, this is 2003 or whatever it was. I think the teacher's salary now is maybe the highest now is like 90 something, which is an improvement for sure. But yeah, it was like 60. And I remember looking at my paycheck every 2 weeks. I would clear, my net pay would be like 1,630. Let's say 1,650. Okay, so I clear 1,650 every 2 weeks. So that means in 1 month I clear 3,300. Okay, I clear 3,300 for having a full-time job. Now let's put that into perspective. Let's say you pay rent or mortgage, which is 1,000 something more plus. Okay, that's half your paycheck gone. Now you got transportation, you got food, entertainment, maybe you have student loans, birthday presents you got to buy for people, whatever, cell phone, internet, entertainment, Netflix, I don't know, whatever else you do. How much of that left do you have? How much of that left do you have? A couple $100 maybe?
Not much. According to Poutine Nation, your math skills are still pretty good. And crew, our dear friend at Dude Buddha wants to know: were you ever in Ottawa?
Yes, I went to the University of Ottawa for my undergrad. I did.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
There you go, there,
yeah.
Mr. Twan.
I did
Dude Buddha in the house.
Yeah, yeah. My math skills are still kind of working. I was smart. I didn't take too many blows to the head. I've only had a few fights, which is great. We'll keep it at that, and don't need any more damage, so I'm good. You know, I always say that I don't care what part of my body breaks, but as long as this doesn't break, because if this breaks, your whole life falls apart.
No doubt.
Snap my elbow, you want to pop my ribs and bust my knee out, but don't break this, please. Okay, this is very, very important. So, getting back to what I was saying, yeah. So let's say you're able to save. Let's just say you're able to save $500 a month. Let's just say, okay, after paying mortgage / rent, all your expenses, your living expenses, whatever, you save $500 a month. So in so 2 months is $1,000. So in 1 year you save $6,000, right? Okay, so you save $6,000 in 1 year. Now, if you take a vacation, how much does a vacation cost you? $2,000, maybe more, depends what you're doing. So almost half of that's gone in one vacation. And let's account for like emergency stuff. Like let's say something happened, you have to replace this, or something happened to your car, you got to replace that if it's not on a lease. Or someone's having a birthday party, you got to spend a couple $100. Someone's having a wedding, you got to spend a couple $100. Your friend goes, hey, let's just take this last vacation, or you go out for drinks one night, you spend $200 or $300 more than you wanted. So little things like that pop up. So at the end of it, you're not left with much. And so I thought in my head, I'm going to do this for 30 years of my life, saving $6,000 a year. And then I look around, all these people out there that are really wealthy, like you drive through Post Road, Bridle Path, Forest Hill, you see these homes that are like 5 million. You see people in Bentleys and stuff. And you see these people with these big companies owning so much assets and stuff. And I go, what makes them different from me? Why is it that these people are so wealthy and I'm saving $6,000 a year? You see what I mean? And I go, is that destiny? Am I destined to just live like this for the rest of my life? Just getting by, paying bills, accumulating a little bit of wealth. I see my father do it. He was happy doing that, but he saved most of his paycheck. He was insane. Okay. So he spends on nothing, but that's him. He's happy with that. Good for him. But I said to myself, is this what life is about? Just working like crazy to save a couple $1,000 so you might have on a holiday here and there. You might be able to go to a nice restaurant once in a while, but you'll never live in a beautiful home, a massive home. You're never going to drive a really nice car, whatever, right? You might not order like a $200 steak at Blue Blood or something like that. You might not.
Jacobs and Co.
There you go.
Right?
Yes, exactly. So I became depressed because I thought this was my destiny. I'm just going to be destined to just be working until I'm retired. And then when I'm retired, I do what? I get a pension of a couple $1,000 a month. So I could just hopefully have my mortgage paid off by then, right? Hopefully have my mortgage paid off by then. Okay, that's what I hope for. But I'll be like 60 years old, 50 something years old. And, 2/3 of my life is already over, if not more.
Well,
so
I have to tell you, crew, that I find it fascinating because no one's ever taken the time to sort of really go through the details of everything that I really preach about when I talk about, is this what we're designed to do? We live 80 years, 90 years, you work for 40 of them. Right. And what about if you don't like your job? What about if you're surrounded by negative people? What about what if? And at the end of the day, you're right. You're going to work, you're going to have a steady paycheck, and you're lucky if you're going to save $6,000 a month. The breakdown is beautiful. It really is an alignment with exactly what I talk about.
But then you see, what's interesting is that's what a lot of times society has structured us for. The school system socializes and embeds in their students good employees. So show up on time, get to work on time, hand in your assignments on time. You got a test coming up, so you better study for it. So these are all responsibilities to be a good employee. So when you go out in the work world, your job starts at 8 a.m. You're there at 8 a.m. or before, Your boss says, I want the report on my desk by 10 a.m. You get that report in on the desk by 10 a.m. because you're used to it from the school system. So the school system socializes us to be good employees. Okay, so, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need employees. It's very, very important. You need nurses. You need construction workers. You need McDonald's workers. You need these people. Very, very important. Okay, and so I was depressed, and I actually went through life being depressed at that time, just thinking I'm destined to be like this for the rest of my life. And so I'll be like these other teachers, just bitter and angry by the time I'm 50 years old and bitching and complaining and going, oh, you know, I got 6 more years and my mortgage is paid off. Then I can finally retire. You know, like I can't do that. So unfortunately, that's what my upbringing has taught me. So that's why my father was really big in education. You study hard, you're going to get a good job eventually. So I met this one friend. Okay, her name was Marta. I remember back in like 2004, and I told her about this predicament I was in, and she said to me, you know, I got a good book for you to read. And I go, oh, yeah, what's that? And then she goes,
oh, there he is. Rich
goes,
Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, you got to read this book. And I said, why do I got to read this book? She says, oh, I think I know and understand what you're talking about, but if you read this book, it's really going to help you. I'm like, all right. So she loaned me the book. She said, you got to read it. I'm like, okay. So I didn't read it for a while. I just kind of left it because I was at U of T at night, taking night classes too. So I was running the business on the side, taking night classes at U of T and working a full-time job. So I was pretty busy. She said, you got to read it. And then she kept asking me every week, did you read it? Did you read it? Read it? And then I'm like, no. And she said, why not? And then it just be like going on like this for a couple of weeks. And then finally I decided to read it, not because, you know, I thought it's going to help me. I decided to read it just to shut her up. That was the reason why I read it. So I read it. I remember just reading it one night while I went to bed. What an excuse to read a book. And man, I tell you, when I read that, my mind was blown. You know what I mean? It blew my mind completely. It was clear as day as to why I was feeling this way. And you know what it said in the book? And I'll give a super fast summary. Those people that haven't read it, those people that have read it, good for you. But the people that haven't read it, I really highly recommend you read it. What it talked about was exactly the rat race. Putination talked about the rat race. He's right. So what it is in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he said that society sets us on a path. And this path is when you're born, your parents go, okay, you got to work hard and you got to study hard. Because if you work hard and study hard, you'll go to a good university. And if you go to a good university, you're going to get a good job. And if you have a good job, you're going to get a good salary. And if you have a good salary, you're going to have a good pension. And you go through life working this full-time job to pay off this mortgage and maybe buy a few toys. Okay. So that's what we talked about. But then he says, see, that's called the middle class lifestyle. That's the middle class thinking he talked about. Okay. Middle class is about got to go to a good university or good community college, get a good job, and start paying off a mortgage and have a car, raise a family, stuff like that. Okay. So that's cool. That works for you. That's great. But he says, however, if you want to be wealthy, you need to change your mindset. You need to switch from this middle class mindset. Oh, sorry. And he talked about poor people too. And he talked about poor people in the sense that he says poor people like to buy stuff. You know, like when they get money, they like to buy stuff. They just like to have a lot of stuff because maybe for them, it's like status symbol. Like, oh, I can afford all this stuff, right? So he talked about that. And he said, that's another danger and another way you're not going to become wealthy. So he said, wealthy people have a specific type of mindset. And what sort of mindset is that? Well, their mindset is about growing wealth, building wealth. Like when they have money, it's not about buying a Porsche or taking another vacation. It's about building it, investments and things like that. So what he talked about was really interesting. And this was the key. He talked about something called passive income. And he talked about earned income. Those are the two major ones. There's a few more, but those are the two. Let's categorize those two. He said earned income is what most people do, middle class. He said earned income is where you have a full-time job. So you got a full-time job, you get your salary, $80,000 a year, whatever it is. And so earned income means you have to physically be there to work for that money. So if I'm not there, I don't get paid unless I have sick days. But, you know, on the whole, if I'm not there to work, I don't get paid. So earned income is he said in the book, is very, very difficult to become wealthy. That's why I was oppressed, because I thought my teaching job, I'm going to be making $3,300 a month clear. And that's my earned income. And I understand now, yeah, you can never be wealthy with this amount of money. It's so little. So what he says instead, he goes, what you gotta do is, instead of gunning for earned income, like getting the best job or whatever, or higher paid job, is you gotta gun for something called passive income. Passive income is money that comes into you that you don't have to physically work for. So passive income could be something like, you're a landlord and you get rent from your tenants every month. You have a business and you get your dividends every month. You lend out money and you get interest. You buy stocks and it pays out dividends every month. You see what I mean? So it's the money that you get that you don't have to physically work for. Royalties. So some people wrote a book and they get money for that, right? So like Michael Jackson, I think, had some huge royalties because he bought the Beatles, some kind of big album, something. I can't remember what it was. I think some people, yeah. So, and then he get paid out every month for that. Michael Jackson was getting huge money from that, having that Beatles thing. So anyways, so yeah, that's what he talked about. And so he says wealthy people are focused on passive income, not earned income. I'm like, I had no idea. And of course, yes, Putination says, that's right. The term is leverage. Okay, leverage, he's right. So leverage is very, very important. I'm going to actually talk a little bit about that after, if that's okay. But I just want to finish up on this income part. So earned income versus passive income. So what he says in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, got to read it, by the way, everyone. Whether you want to be wealthy or not, you just got to read it. It just gives you such a different perspective on money and how everything works. So he says that now, instead of having the mindset that I want to get the biggest salary, like a middle-class mindset, guys, you now have to have the mindset of, how do I acquire passive income? What stocks are good to buy that give a good dividend? Who can I lend money to get interest? What business can I invest in that's going to be paying me out every month? And the more of this I can acquire, the more passive income I get. So wealthy people have a lot of passive income coming in, because a wealthy person versus everyone else. So you give a wealthy person $10,000 versus giving everyone else $10,000. You give the average person $10,000. They're going to be like, oh my God, let's take that vacation. Let's go to a nice restaurant. I can put more towards my car payments. Okay, that's a lot of times how they think. Whereas a wealthy person goes, okay, I got 10 grand. So you know what? Maybe I'll take 1,000 out of it to enjoy myself a little bit, have this nice dinner at this one restaurant, take my wife out, my husband, whatever. And then I'll take the remaining 9,000 and I'm going to look for somewhere to invest. Not just invest to, for the sake of investing, but it's to invest to produce passive income. So is there a stock that I can buy that gave out a good return? Is there a business I can put it into? Is there maybe a rental property that I can go partner up in? Things like that. Now, in terms of investments, there's really two types of investments that you could do for in terms of making money. Number one is an investment that pays out. So if it pays out all the time, that's called cash flow. So a rental property that pays you out every month from rental income, cash flow. Or I invest in a business and it pays me out every month, that's cash flow from dividends. Or number two, it's called capital gains. So you invest in something, doesn't really pay you out much, but it keeps appreciating in value. And then one day when you do sell it, you get capital gains. So if I bought something for 10 grand and I sold it for 15, then I get a capital gains of 5,000 and I pay my tax on that. Now, ideally, good strategies would maybe be to buy things that have both, that maybe will appreciate in value and also give out some sort of return. So a lot of times real estate is like that. So you're getting rental income while the property appreciates, or certain stocks. I guess my dad loves TD Bank stock. So yeah, okay, I buy TD Bank stocks just to make him happy. But I mean, the TD Bank stock keep going up, especially when you buy it during COVID when it was down. Now it's up, it pays out every month. So you could do something like that. And it completely changed my whole mindset about how money worked. So now instead of thinking, okay, so I'm gonna get 60 grand a year as a teacher, but you know what? If I take these courses, I'm gonna move up in pay. I'll get 65,000 a year. And then if I become vice principal, I can make 80,000 a year. You see what I mean? So that kind of thinking is not going to get you wealthy. It'll get you more pay, but then the problem with earned income is that the taxation is very high on it. So when you get taxed, I mean, the people here who are getting a regular paycheck, how much tax are they taking off from you every 2 weeks? Have a look at it. You know how much tax they took off me? A ton. So when they say you make $100,000 a year, that's a good salary. But after all the deductions, CPP, income tax, I don't know if you have union dues, all that kind of stuff, you're probably taking home maybe 60, right? Around there, which is what? Divide by 12, 5,000 a month. So $100,000 a year salary, you clear 5,000 a month, which I guess is okay. It depends how you spend and how you live. But he was saying, if you do that, that's fine. If I make 5,000 a month, if I live very simply, I could save maybe half of that, 2,500 a month. And then every time I save that, in 2 months, I'll save 5,000. In 4 months, I'll have 10 grand. And if I have 10,000, now I can buy an investment. And I'll just keep doing that for years. And my wealth will grow and grow and grow. So you can still become wealthy as an employee, but you have to live a very, very simple lifestyle a lot of times and not spend a lot of money and use that money to build investments. So that's what this book gave me. This book said that if you want to try to become wealthy, you got to make that leap from an employee to an entrepreneur.
This is where I'm headed, crew. I want to know about this, because what was the quantum moment for you? What was it when you decided to leave?
That's a great question. So this book actually gave me the confidence to leave my job. And because I read that book, it changed my mindset. Now, if I quit my job while still having a middle-class mindset, then it'll be a disaster. Okay, because I wouldn't be looking about investments and businesses and stuff like that. But he said in the book, he goes, there's a couple ways to become wealthy, okay? Number one is to be a landlord, acquire property, and keep buying property. Number two is be an investor, okay? So you're buying whatever, stock, private equity, you're investing in different things, okay? A lot of these people who invested in Bitcoin back in the day, like a lot of them made a lot of money. Another way is to be an entrepreneur, okay? But he says as a salaried employee, very, very hard, okay? So become an entrepreneur. So I thought, I'm not a landlord. I'm not really an investor because, back in 2003, I was like in my 20s. I didn't have that much money, right? And so I thought, okay, entrepreneur, that's interesting. I'll be an entrepreneur. And I was taking business classes at U of T already. So I was learning about marketing and accounting and all this kind of stuff. And I had a little bit of business experience before because my father, remember I told you my father had a business on the side? So my father was a health inspector for the city of Toronto. That was his government job. And then he started a business on the side. He had a pest control company on the side. Okay, so that's what he did. And so as a kid growing up, I'd watch him run this side business, and I see the employees come and I see the money he get when the employees came with all the payouts and stuff, and him buying supplies and doing his advertising and talking to customers. I saw him do that. So it was actually really interesting. And I remember one time too, and I think my fascination with money came from him, because what he did was one time I remember going out in the basement. I was a kid, and then he was counting a bunch of money from the business, right? I guess he had a good month. And then he said to me, he goes, "You like that? You like that?" And I go, "Yeah." He pointed all the cash, and he goes, "Well, I'll tell you what." He says, "If you work hard, you can have that. Otherwise, you'll be flipping burgers for the rest of your life." I'm like, all right. So, little things like that your parents tell you, you don't forget, So I thought, okay, whatever, that's what it is. So, and he kept doing that over and over again. So it kind of ingrained in my head, okay, I don't want to be flipping burgers for the rest of my life. But he did tell me that it's good to get a minimum wage job in the beginning, because it teaches you how to work hard and how to make so little money from all that hard work that it motivates you to get out of that, to work even harder to get out. You see what I mean? So there's a good thing about flipping burgers, not taking anything away from that. Okay, it's noble. It's hard work. And I worked at Subway sandwiches, and I worked at Movenpick back in the day. I worked in the restaurants. It was hard work for $6.15 an hour, because that's what the minimum wage was. So you work all these hours, your paycheck was like $230, and I'm like, wow. Anyways, that was back in the Ottawa days, early 2000s, late 1990s, I think. So anyways, going back to this, what I was talking about earlier was the leap to become an entrepreneur.
Yes, that's what I'm curious, because I think that crew, there's a lot of people who will connect with that because, as I mentioned to you before, we had guests on the show. We had a wonderful guest, a Jamaican woman who I love very dearly. Her name's Christine, and she gave up a job with the Toronto Transit Commission to save her son, who was going through some mental challenges, and sort of embark on entrepreneurship and start a career as a baker. And what a leap of faith that she needed to take to be able to do that. So I really want to get into that, Warren. I want to get into that leap.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So that's a noble story, what you just told me there. I wish her the best of luck, and I really hope she makes it. I mean, that's excellent. Good for her. So it said in the book, it says, you got to make that leap of faith. You gotta, because if you don't, you're going to have regrets. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I pondered about it for a long time, and I thought, and I talked to my dad about it, and he's like, not a good idea. He goes, you went to university, you got 2 degrees at that time, and so you can run a gym? And I'm like, well, it's not. I go, okay, how about this? I'll make you a compromise. I will take a year leave of absence without pay from the Toronto District School Board to run this business. If it doesn't go, I'll go back to work. He was like, all right, that's a deal. So I got him on board with that. So my classes were actually getting a little bit bigger. So I actually attracted the attention of an investor at that time. And he used to train with me. And this guy here, he was a very interesting guy. And he always came in these rocker jeans, and he had this spiked blonde hair and these ripped shirts and stuff. And he just looked like some Joe, off the street. He fits really well in the Queen West. Okay, he looks great. So there's a character. So he said to me one day,
I love it.
Training with me, and then he took my classes, and he saw how busy the classes were getting. We're in this small little space on King Street in that BJJ gym. And he said to me, hey, you got a good thing going here. Do you think you ever want to do this full time? I think you can make some good money at this. And at first I'm like, no. I'm a teacher. I went to university to become a teacher. And so after reading this book, it talked about investors and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, so my side business is getting a little busier. And here's this guy who offered to invest in me. And I went back to him. I'm like, so what do you mean you'll invest in me? You're some kind of investor? He goes, yep. He goes, I go, what do you do? And he goes, oh, I'm retired. I'm like, how old are you? And he was in his 40s. I'm like, you're retired in your 40s?
Wow.
Holy crap. And so he told me he was a hedge fund trader back in the day, made 7 figures. I'm like, wow. And then he got out. I'm like, oh, so what do you do every day? He goes, nothing. I roam around the city. I go for lunch. I look at my stocks. I train with you. I'm like, wow, that's a great life. The kind of life I want. So he said, I'll be your investor. So then I'm like, okay. And I talked to my friends about it, and they're all like, oh man, you sure you want to do this? And it filled me with all these doubts. Oh man, what if you fail? This and that. I'm like, no, I don't think I'm going to fail, but yeah, what if I do fail? So there's this push and pull of emotions. I want to do it. I don't want to do it. I want to do it. I don't want to do it. I could fail, but I got a good job here. I got my summers off, all this kind of stuff. I could just do it in the summer, right? I could do that, right? And then I just said, you know what? I just said, I can't. I finally said, I cannot do this job for another 30 years of my life. I can't do this. I'm not happy doing this. It's not what I want. And then the Harris government changed everything. And then teaching became a lot more regulated. There's a lot more paperwork. It became a lot more work. They took away prep time. So now there's more work, and you have to do more extracurricular. So it was really, really, the workload became heavy. Okay. And they gave you a 1% raise, something like that. So I'm like, wow. Okay. So I told my agent, okay, I'm going to take a year leave of absence without pay. I told my real estate agent, I go, find me a space to open my first gym. I'm going to do this full time. And he goes, okay. So he's looking all around. He goes, you want to be in downtown? I go, yeah, I want to stay near my gym on King and Bathurst. That's where I was. So he found a space, Queen and Bathurst, on the 3rd floor. It's a 6,000 square foot space. He goes, this space is perfect. It's been unrented. It's perfect for your use. So I went to look at it. And I'm like, wow, it's huge. because the space I was in was like 2,000 square feet. This is triple the size, right? And I'm like, I don't know if I really want this. It's too big. And he's like, oh, but the landlord's willing to work out a good rent with you and this and that. And he goes, to be honest with you, it's really hard to find the space that you're looking for in this area. And I'm like, just keep looking. So he kept looking, and we looked at 2 other spaces, and they were like, wow. And then I said, okay, let's go back to this original Queen and Bathurst location. So I went there, and then I talked to the landlord. He goes, I'll give you a favorable rent for the first year. I'm like, okay, it's a lot more rent than I'm willing to pay. I talked to my investor about it. He goes, you know what? Let's just do it. Why not? Let's just do it. He goes, what if it gets really big? You're going to need the space. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. So I said, okay, the landlord. I said, all right, I'll take the space. And he goes, great. So he sent me the lease. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll just do this for 1 year. If it doesn't work, I close shop, right? I go back to King and Bathurst, to a small space. And he said in the lease, he goes, it's a 5-year minimum. I go, 5-year minimum? He goes, yep. I go, I want to do it for 1 year. He goes, nope, 5 years or nothing. And I try to go back and forth with him. He's like, nope, either you take it for 5 years or you don't. And I'm like, oh, man. Oh, geez. I hope to just do this for a year and that'll be it. But I'm like, you know what? Forget. I'll do it. So I signed a 5-year lease. I didn't tell my father. So I'm like, I went all in. It's like you're gambling. You only have like $100 left or whatever. You go
and
all
the
in
chips, baby.
That's it. You go all in on red. I'm like, not like half on red and a little there. No, this is all in. And I signed that lease. I was stuck there for 5 years. So if it doesn't go well, I'm paying rent on it for 5 years. So anyways, I took that risk, and thank goodness it worked out. Really, it worked out. I changed the name to TKMT, Toronto Kickboxing Muay Thai Academy. Our first location, the Queen of Bathurst, is still there today. And thank God it worked out. Now, let me get into a little bit about leverage and how the business expanded to have multiple locations, okay? I think Putination, you're talking about leverage, and I want to touch a little bit on that, and this will be useful, I think, to Crew Mel as well. So when I went, I started 2006, by the way, okay? July 4, 2006, when I first opened my doors to full-time classes. Okay, that's Independence Day in the U.S., but that's Independence Day for Warren Lee as well. Okay, July 4, 2006. Okay, it's the day to be remembered. So 2006. Yeah, so I'm having an anniversary birthday for my staff. We're having a big one, but I'll talk more about that later. But so when I first started the business, I was doing everything. Okay, so I was teaching all the classes. I might have had one instructor help me. I was cleaning the gym every night. I did all the advertising. I picked up the phone, all the accounting, held the pads for all the for all the privates. I did everything in that gym. Okay, everything. And I was 7 days a week. I was there, and it was deadly, hard work. And when I was sick, I would have to come in. I remember one time I had a flu. And I was in bed, but I had to get up. I had to get up and go teach class, man. And I was dying there. I remember that. So, yeah, thanks, Putination crew. Warren Independence Day is true. And then I remembered, this is interesting. I had a private client one day. This is around early 2007. This gentleman here, greatest guy ever, changed my whole life. So he came and trained with me, and he's the funniest guy in the world, right? So his name is Brad, and I didn't know much about him, but the reason why he trained with me, because he was very thankful. He was hosting a charity boxing event, and he contacted me because he wanted me to help him put together a card, because he said the gym owner he was working with before screwed him. So he's desperate. He saw my ad up at Warriors Martial Arts Supplies. He called me up without knowing me. He's like, would you help me with this? It's for charity. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. It's for charity, and I'm a new gym. So I helped him out. I put together some fights for him, like some exhibitions, and he was very thankful. And he came to me after to do private lessons, and he said to me, he goes, so every time when I start off a private lesson, I always say, what are your goals? What do you want to work on? Because some people want to lose weight. Some people want to get better at Muay Thai, right? Some people want to work a specific technique. So I just want to get to know what you want to do, and I'll tailor the program to that. He said to me, he goes, I want you to make me the toughest Jew in Rosedale. I'm like, what? But there aren't really any Jews in Rosedale. He goes, exactly. I'm like, oh, you're a funny guy, are you? Okay, that's hilarious. I'm like, well, who's the toughest Jew in Rosedale right now? And he goes, it's Heather Reisman. I go, Heather Reisman? You mean the CEO of Chapters Indigo? He goes, yep. I'm like, all right, well, I'll do my best to make you tougher than her. That's fine, no problem. So so it was really funny, right? And I was training with him, and then we would train a couple times a week. Then he saw me like cleaning and doing all the teaching, and saw me do that. And then he said to me, he goes, hey Warren, let me ask you a question. He goes, do you ever want to be wealthy? I'm like, yeah. I thought it was a trick question or something. He goes, well, let me tell you something bluntly. As a friend, you're never going to get wealthy doing what you're doing now. And I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? Like I own my own business. Isn't how you become wealthy? He goes, you're right. That's the first step. But he goes, let me tell you something. Let me let you in a little secret. He goes, you know what I do? I go, no, what do you do? He goes, I own a merchant bank. I'm like, okay, what's that? He goes, well, we acquire businesses. We buy companies. I'm like, oh, so kind of like Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, like he acquires companies. He goes, well, kind of like that. He goes, but Berkshire Hathaway acquires percentages of companies, like maybe 50% or sometimes 100%, say 75%. But he says we're in the business of acquiring 100% of companies from people that retire. I'm like, oh. And he goes, you know how many businesses I own right now? I'm like, I don't know. How many you own? He goes, 11. I'm like, you own 11 businesses? He goes, yep. And he goes, what am I doing right now? I'm like, you're training with me. He goes, exactly. And you know what I'm going to do after? I'm like, what? He goes, I'm going to go for a nice lunch. I'm like, really? And he goes, what are you doing? And I go, I'm teaching you right now. He goes, exactly. And then what are you going to do after? I said, I'm going to clean the gym and then teach evening class. He goes, Warren, let me tell you something. If you ever want to be wealthy, you got to learn one important concept. I'm like, what's that? He goes, it's called leverage, right? Putin Nation, it's called leverage. I'm like, leverage? He goes, yep. He goes, look it up when you get home and we'll talk about it later. I'm like, okay. So I went home, I researched leverage, and I'm like, leverage, which is, you see, in a nutshell, what leverage means is this. Let's say there's a big rock and I want to move this rock. So I can push it myself. Now it's really hard. I'll probably move it, but I'm going to be grunting and sweating. Or I can get like a little, I can get a stand and I can get a board and a plank and I can put it over like this and the rock will be here. And then I could push the plank and the rock will roll. That's leverage. It's utilizing something that will achieve a greater effect. Okay. I'm like, So I didn't really fully understood it. I talked to him about it and he kind of talked a little bit. And then I remember he saying to me, you got to learn, you got to study more about leverage because what you're doing right now, you're not doing any kind of leverage. So in my research of what leverage was, I came across this book that really highlighted what leverage talked about and talked about that in the internet. During my research goes, there's this book called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Sorry, I don't have it here. I can't show you, but it's called The E-Myth, M-Y-T-H, written by a man named Michael Gerber, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, G-E-R-B-E-R. Okay?
The apple pie lady.
Yeah, it's called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. E doesn't mean electronic, like email. No, E means entrepreneur, the entrepreneur's myth. Now, what this talked about, this is what gave me the key to opening that door for multiple locations. So the E-Myth, what it did was it talked about something really interesting. It goes like this. It opened by saying, people don't understand this. It goes, why do most businesses fail? You see what I mean? 90% or more, around that number, businesses fail. Okay, why? He says, well, because people don't understand the different roles in running a business. So what does that mean exactly? Well, what he says is this. He goes, in every single business, whether it's McDonald's or Walmart or Crew Mel's business or my business, doesn't matter. Every business has three roles. The people perform three roles, okay? You have the technician, you have the manager, and you have the entrepreneur. Now, let's take a hypothetical example. Let's take a guy named Michael. So Michael went to Humber College or Centennial. He studied auto mechanics, all right? He studied auto because he's always been very fascinated with cars. So he studied auto mechanics. I think it's 3-year program, 2-3-year program. So he graduates with an auto mechanic certificate. He gets his first job at Speedy or Midas. Okay. His first client comes in. The first client comes in. So the guy needs an alternator change. So it takes Michael an hour to do this work. And the company billed out this client at $500. So Michael goes, so they paid me $25, which is $25 an hour, and they made $475. So they made all this profit off my back. All right. So I do that enough. Michael does that enough. Then Michael goes, you know what? I'm good at what I do. I'm a really good mechanic. And you know what? That money should be going in my pocket. So, I'm going to open my own business. I'm going to open my own mechanic shop. Okay. So he goes and opens his own mechanic shop because he's like, because I'm such a good mechanic that as soon as I open the doors, I'm going to get flooded with customers. That's what he thinks. And that's the E-myth. Okay. Now, Michael opens a mechanic shop. Now, the thing is this, not only is he fixing cars, but what's he doing now? Maybe he has staff. He has to manage staff. How is he going to advertise? Does he know how to negotiate a lease? Does he know how to negotiate prices with a supplier? Does he know how to talk to customers? Does he know how to do accounting? So now Michael ain't just fixing cars anymore. He's doing all these other things. So he's taken on all these different roles. Now, let's go back to Speedy or Midas for a minute. The technician. Let's talk about these roles. This is very, very important, by the way. So the technician is the person who's performing the product or producing the product or performing the service.
Correct.
So it's the mechanic, the one fixing cars. They're the technician. The entrepreneur, they're the people that run the business. They're doing the marketing, the accounting, strategies, human resource. They got the human resource management going, and they're the ones thinking about business operations, and they're the ones who are out there expanding. And then you have the manager. The manager is the go-between the entrepreneur and the technician. So, and the problem is a lot of times people who are good technicians think that that is enough to have a good business, to be successful in business. And it's not, okay? Because running a business requires many, many different skills. You see what I mean? Just because you're good at fixing cars, it doesn't mean you're going to be good at running a business. So that's why a lot of them fail. Some of them are, sure, a lot of them are not. And so I'll give you a super example and what inspired me for TKMT. So when I was a teacher in Scarborough, I taught at one of the areas in Scarborough. And in that area in Scarborough, there's a large Caribbean population, right? And the Caribbean population, so there's all these Jamaican and Trinidadian restaurants everywhere, and it's all really good. So I remember this one Jamaican restaurant I used to go to. It was like a mom and pop place. So the father would be cooking in the back, and the wife would be serving the food, and they ran the business together. The son would come home from school and help in the business. So they were there all the time working. Okay, food's really good. Now there's another Caribbean restaurant called Sunrise Caribbean Restaurants, and there was a Sunrise not too far from them. Okay, I think over on Kingston Road, and Sunrise is a chain. All right, so I go to both, and guess what? It's almost pretty much the same. Jerk chicken, curry goat, roti. It's all the same kind of foods. Okay, I mean a little bit different spice, but essentially the same thing. Okay, I like both. They're both good. So what do I notice different about these two businesses? Well, when I go into the mom and pop shop, I'm being served by the mom and pop. They're there working. So that means if they're not there, the business needs to close for the day. Okay. Now you go to Sunrise. What do I see? This is what I see. I see all these people working there. There's people in the cashier. There's people making the food. There's a one lady taking car orders, drive through. Okay. So those are the technicians. They're all making the food, serving the customers. And there is a manager there. What's the manager doing? The manager is there to ensure that the technicians are performing their jobs properly, customer service is good, the store is open, it's clean, it meets all the specs that the entrepreneurs want. What is the entrepreneur doing? Well, the entrepreneur is not there. The entrepreneur is planning the business, is doing the marketing and the advertising. Okay, so what the difference is Sunrise has a business system that runs itself, whereas the mom and pop place is the system. They are the system, which means if they're not there, the system doesn't run. Sunrise, the owners are not there, and it runs by itself, right? So the owners, what they've done, the entrepreneurs, is they set up the business system, where the technicians are running everything, overseen by a manager, so that the entrepreneur could leave. And when the entrepreneur leaves, what is the entrepreneur doing? Is he like sitting on a beach, sipping on drinks and having some good food, or sitting on his yacht? Maybe. But the entrepreneur, what they're doing is they're opening more sunrises and setting up the same business system in each sunrise. This business system is proven to work.
Exactly. Yep.
So Sunrise now, you go on their website, how many locations they have? Holy crap, a lot. Back then, it was only like 5. That was back in the 2000s. Now they're like all over the bloody place. They're huge now. So that gave me the idea. It said that if you want to kind of really make real wealth, you need to have multiple locations. Okay, you can't just have the one business, because if you have the one business, you're stuck there working all the time. It's like having a full-time job, having a salary again, no different. But if you have systems, different locations, and they all run by the same system that runs itself, overseen by a manager, then you as the entrepreneur can exit. And what do you do when you exit? You are looking to open more and putting that same system in place. So that is what leverage is in the world of business. And I understand now what my friend Brad was talking about. He had 11 businesses, all running themselves, all overseen by managers. So he can exit and look for more businesses to buy and train at my gym and have a nice lunch and become the toughest Jew in Rosedale. You see?
And so, crew, just because we're getting close to the end already, but I guess that the real question is that tell us a little bit what was sort of the end result of all this learning. I really love, in fact, Putti Nation wrote, you're breaking it down. That's something that a lot of people don't do when they come on here, The fact that you're breaking it down is really important because, listen, I know it was told to me, personality-driven businesses versus process-driven businesses.
Yes.
And personality-driven businesses don't make any money. It's the process-driven businesses that make money.
Correct.
So where are you at now? Like what's happening in the life and times? You've got 3 gyms.
Yep. So that book inspired me to open more locations. I'm like, oh, okay. So I need to get technicians in here that run the gyms. That teach the classes, that get the cleaner in there to clean it, get a manager in there to oversee everything. Oh, and another thing he talked about was very important about the 3 different roles: technician, manager, entrepreneur. The manager is a very important role because it's the go-between the entrepreneur and the technician. So for example, now he used the example McDonald's. McDonald's is the most ultimate system of leverage. McDonald's, okay? Because it's a franchise system. Every McDonald's you go to, no matter where in the world, if you're in Osaka, Japan, or you're in Alabama, a Big Mac is a Big Mac. Okay, it's the same. It doesn't matter where you go, it's the same. Okay, so everywhere McDonald's opens is exactly the same system. It's all overseen by a manager. So the manager's role is to ensure that the entrepreneur's vision is being met. So if the entrepreneur is like, okay, we're going to introduce this new lobster in this region of Canada, it's called the Mick lobster. In Eastern Canada probably will do well. Okay, this is how we do it. Here's the manual to make a Mick lobster. So brings it to all the managers of that Nova Scotia area. Those managers will go to the technicians and go, okay, guys and girls, listen up. We got a new burger coming out. This is how we're going to make it. Training starts now. Okay. And so now they make the Mick lobster. Now, the technicians could also be like, listen, we have some concerns, like the vents over here, they're not working properly and we're inhaling these fumes. We don't feel good about it. Okay, then the manager will go to the entrepreneur and go, yeah, listen, there's a problem with the vent system. We kind of got to fix it. And the entrepreneur goes, okay, go fix it. Done. You see, so it's a go-between. So the technician and entrepreneur never really talk, apparently, in those huge systems like that. So this inspired me to run TKMT like that. And so there was a lot of growing pains, but there's 3 locations now. And we're talking about now having more locations down the road when COVID's over, possible franchising systems. So we're thinking about all that kind of stuff down the road. My investor got bought out by another person. Her name is Candace, and she's been with me since I think 2013 or 14, a long time. She's great, and she's come on board, and she's helped me run the business now too. And we're sitting together, we're talking about expansions and stuff. So that inspired me to open multiple locations. So a combination of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad and the E-Myth have got me to where I am today. Oh, and my father, I'm running another business now. We're talking about a pest control company because my father didn't want to run it anymore because he's completely retired. So he said, you can have it or you shut it down. It's your choice. And I'm like, okay. It came with one employee at that time. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And so I took it, and so I'm now working more on that because I have the time out from the gym. So I'm expanding that now, and I've hired some more people, opened up different divisions. We have a wildlife division, a construction division, and a lot of different sort of things like that. So there's expansions in that happening, and that's all from the E-Myth. So and because of Rich Dad Poor Dad, I learned a lot about investments. So the money that's coming into me from these different sources, I now am packing away to all these. I'm trying to build a lot of different investments. So investing in this, lending money here, buying stocks there. So so that's basically what it is. My life now is completely changed over from what my dad taught me, which is go to school, study hard, get a good job, so you can pay off a mortgage for 30 years, to now running businesses, expanding it, having multiple sources of income, building investments, and basically living life. That's where my life is now turned. And so to me, I'm not depressed anymore. So I'm like, so this is the answer. All because I've read these books. Now, the thing about these books is I told other people to read these books too. And they're all like, yeah, I read it. Or, oh, okay, I'll read it. Cool. And I know they've never read it. And I know they're not going to read it. And the ones who have read it, I don't see many of them really taking any action. They just read it and go, oh yeah, I read it. It's cool.
I've read both, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, but you're on your way to becoming successful. You were before. You had that really successful business back in the day, So I mean,
yeah,
like
100%,
100%. You're an
But
entrepreneur.
I love what Putin Nation wrote that he said, for anyone wondering whether it is worth to buy a $25 or $30 book, hopefully this answers that for you. Yeah, and I'm really grateful that you've taken the time, Warren, to do this because, someone in business might say, well, this is sort of a very basic understanding of business. Yeah, it may be, but let's talk fighting. Okay. I taught my students basics, and we had a real good track record, Warren, because I taught basics, but I taught solid fundamentals. And that's what wins is basics.
And it showed because your students were really good. You were, in my opinion, one of the top-notch schools for Muay Thai in Ontario. And the reason why is because all your students came out with very clean technique. But not only that, but what I saw about your students that really fascinated me about you was that the way they respected you. They really listened to you. They respected you. They followed you. And what also fascinated me about you too, Krumel, is you have this sort of aura of charisma, this charismatic leader. So you always have something wise to say, and people, when you do talk, as people listen, they go, oh wow, and your students gravitate towards you, and because of that, I thought, Krumel is not just another meathead in the community.
Let's talk about how we feel about that. Another meathead in the community. Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, if I can speak frankly, there's a lot of meatheads in this community. Okay. It's any kind of fighting. There's a lot of testosterone. Okay. Yeah. And a lot of these people just, they have massive egos, and these massive egos really, they impede the way you conduct yourself, the relationships you build, and it also impedes your success. But they don't see that because they don't have the humility to come back and go, oh man, I shouldn't have said that. Or, yeah, I see what he's saying. I shouldn't have did it that way, and I'm going to apologize to him. No, they never do that. Nobody ever does that, because there'll be the relationships that would be repaired, and there'll be so many divorces, and business partners wouldn't have to kill each other and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like,
but I love that the proof is in the pie, Warren. And the truth is that, as the first guy to come on, everybody asked me, why don't you have a lot of Muay Thai people on the show? And well, because the truth is that I love what we've done today, breaking it down, some of the basic fundamentals of business, taking the time to do that. And more importantly, proof is in the pie when it comes to your success, crew. And that's why you're here on the show, because I've always respected you as a friend, a colleague, as a martial artist, and you clearly have done something that many school owners only wish that they could do. And you have really come a long way. And I love the fact that you said to me, yeah, I run 3 schools and I teach 0 classes.
Mhm.
0 classes, and I'm there doing MMA training 3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah, you're right. Like I just want to say, I love my staff. The people I have now, they're the most incredible people in the world. I can't do it without them. I think it's really important that you have a good relationship with your people. My people, I love them. I really do. They're like, to me, they're like my second family, aside from my parents. But you know, I couldn't have done it without them. They're greatest people on earth. And you know what? I think a lot of times if you have the right people in there, it makes all the difference in the world. But it's up to you as the leader, as the entrepreneur, to cultivate that good relationship, the positive relationship, good rapport with people. Because if you don't have that, things will fall apart, you know. And also, too, another piece of advice for people out there that are going to do this is you have to really read the person or the people that you bring on board. So these people, a lot of times, the one thing I realized that was a disaster, the people who are self-interested only. So those people that come on board and they tell you they're all about, they want to help you with this and that, to do this, but then their actions show different. They're all about themselves. You know, they don't want to do it that way because it's too much work, or you need to pay me more because of that, why would I want to do that? And no, I don't feel like doing this, you know, and I don't feel like, you know, so those types of people, I've had them, very, very dangerous. And unfortunately, I hear about that in relationships too. So, you know, people who are getting married, or they get a new boyfriend or girlfriend, and in the beginning, that person's so charming. Oh, you know, you're the greatest person in the world, and they bring you flowers, and they take you nice places, and they listen to everything you say, and then they help you with this and that, and they come over and they whatever, do your dishes for you. I don't know what they do. But then when they get comfortable, it's all about them. See what I mean? It's kind of like, oh, you want to do this, but you know, that's nah, it's too far. Nah, let's just do this. I just want to do this. So those little cues. And then when that starts happening, then you're like, okay, so this person kind of dismisses what I want to do or what I'm saying to gear into what they want. So all those self-interest. And a lot of times they manipulate you. They make excuses. So that is how a lot of times relationships break apart. People get divorced, relationships break, business partnerships break apart. People you have to fire because they're all about themselves. And then that you got to realize those signs quickly. So my saying is this, my buddy said this actually, is really good. He goes, hire slowly, fire quickly.
I got a question for you in the chat, crew. It says, how do you make your business decisions?
That's a great question. So I would say I make it, I first want to do some research about it. It depends what kind of decision I'm making. You mean like in terms of hiring somebody, or in terms of expanding, or?
Yeah, it's a bit of a question. Yeah, but I mean, you know, certainly, you know, give us some basics before we close here.
Okay, so in terms of making decisions, I think I look for signs. So in terms of hiring people, I look for certain signs from these people. So if I start sensing things like self-interest only, greed. Oh, for example, do you go by guts or license research? Okay, that's a good question. So both. I actually do a lot of research for myself. One of my interests is actually psychology, because I'm fascinated why people think this way or think that way, why they say this, why they do that. I'm really fascinated by those things. A lot of it's driven by self-esteem, or a lot of it's driven by trauma in childhood, things like that. I want to know about stuff like that. So psychology a lot of times allows me to understand why this person's doing this or trying to do that. And then answer your question, I do go a lot by gut as well. So if I sense that this person here is talking this way or that way, and I try to ask them questions about how their background was growing up, and I kind of get a sense of what this person was like. You look for patterns of behavior, like do they jump jobs a lot? Are they stable in anything? A lot of times, if they're not stable in something, that's a sign. You see what I mean? Like, okay, I understand you don't like your job here, you don't like your job there, you jump job. But a lot of times when things don't look stable in their life, like going through a lot of different relationships, a lot of different jobs, then you kind of wonder why. Right? So things like that, a bit of a red flag for me. But a lot of times it's the gut. And I get a lot from talking to people. When I talk to people, I listen, I ask questions about what they say, how they talk, and what they talk about. I'll ask them questions about this, and I'll see how they answer it. And so a lot of times that gives me a sense of what this person is like. And so I will base a decision just usually based on that, right? So, but like my decision right now to come on to your show, Crew Mel, is my decision to do this is just because, and I feel that I've really bonded with you. I really like you as a person. So I wouldn't do this for a lot of people. But for you, I mean, you're a great guy. You've always have been. You are one of the most respectful people I've ever met. Now, I'm not just like, blowing hearts up your ass or anything, but I'm just really speaking from the heart. And I think Crew Mel's a great person. All the people that are listening right now,
Oh, what happened?
You're awesome. And
say that again, brother. You froze.
Oh, I said all the people that are listening right now on the show, you made a very good decision to invest your time to come on, to listen to this, to follow Crew Mel. You're a great person, and you're going to learn a lot from him. I did, and I really enjoyed being around this guy. I will favors. You ask me something. Want to ask me to do a favor? No problem. I'm there. And if there's some people here who I can kind of inspire, that's great too. If you have some questions for me off the network, that's fine. I'm available to chat with you. It's not a problem. And so, any followers or friends of Crew Mel, a friend of mine.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And listen, I do want to offer something to you live here on the Coffee and Biscotti show. You're getting close to your anniversary. Maybe you'll consider having me come down to the good old T-Dot, the 6, and do a little seminar, even for some of your instructors and some of your team as a celebration. I would love to do that.
How could I say no to that? And then when we go for dinner after, is it going to be Thai or Italian?
I don't know. It could be both. It could be fusion, baby.
Wow. All right, let's do it then. I'm really looking. I would love for you to come down anytime you'd like.
Thank you, sir.
As my guest.
Appreciate it.
It would just be amazing. Really would.
So I'm going to put you backstage, Wars. I'm going to give my final thoughts, but I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all your time today, and I'm such an honor to have you here, Crew. You're a first-class guy, brother.
Thank you so much. I really had a good time, and thanks everybody here for coming on board.
Thanks, bro. I love it, Putti Nation. NBA live here on the Coffee and Biscotti show. I hope you took something from it. I hope that there was something that really, really resonated with you, that touched your heart in a way. Because, we spent a lot of time talking about business today. But the truth is that we didn't talk about the emotions. We didn't talk about him leaving as a high school teacher, leaving a job that is secure, that he would have for the next 30 years to take the risk. Maybe that's what this is about. Maybe that's what speaks to you, is about you taking a risk and doing what you love. I took a risk, my friends. I took a risk in opening up a school when my 70-year-old Italian mom said, "Can't you go get a real job? Can't you get can't you be like, you know what? You're a good talker. Why don't you become a politician?" And thank God I'm not a politician, especially now, But I'll tell you this, my friends, this is something that really touches my heart. I love stories like Crew Warren's. I love stories of people who give up the security blanket to go and do what they love and to go and fulfill their passions. And for 2 times that you wrote it, you're absolutely right, my brother. It's all about mindset, and it's about changing your mindset, and maybe it's about taking some risk. And I love the story of what Crew Warren spoke about today. So don't forget, join me next week. Same bat time, same bat channel here on the Coffee and Biscotti Show. Thank you to everyone who was with us today. Again, I hope you got something from it. But as always, it's a pleasure. And I hope to see you all next week. I'm going to keep next week's guest surprise so that you come and join me next week. For now, Poutine Nation has something for us on deck as we raid to Super Cat K. Is that right, Poutine Nation? At Super Cat K. There you go. Super Cat K, 1 year anniversary stream here on Twitch. Let's do it, baby. And I will see all of you next week on the Coffee and Biscotti Show. Peace.